Hey everybody, this is the Sliders Review, and I'm here today to talk to you about Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 4, Episode 5, Level 5 Transporter Incident, or Accident. I can't remember which one. Now I know why it's called Level 5. It's the 5th episode. There's a little bit of self-awareness in this episode when it comes to that of Pike. He constantly keeps saying he's the captain. He runs the ship. Is his command and all that. And I think he keeps saying that because of the simple fact they keep calling Pike, fans keep calling him the cook of the show. Speaking of Pike, Anson Mount is the executive producer on the show. I had no idea. All right, let's get down to it. This is the puppet episode, the one that a lot of fans have been dreading. Is this gonna make or break a lot of fans as they're gonna continue to watch this show? Is this the straw that broke the camel's back? It was an interesting episode, let's put it that way. Going into this, I dreaded it, right? I did not want to watch this episode. I'm like, God, why puppets of all things? Why this gimmick? Is there going to be something smart about this? Like, I know Turan is supposed to come back this season. Is he going to cause everybody to be puppets? That would have made more sense. But no, he's not here, and there's nothing magical about this. But then I saw Scotty's puppet, and it looks all demonic. I'm all like, maybe it's an evil demonic puppet, similar to that troll that O'Brien had to deal with in Deep Space Nine. No, once again, no magic. This is all seamlessly technological and everything. Because the puppet was in the transporter buffer, and for whatever reason, everybody just got transported into puppets, except for Spock, because he wasn't there. Now, going into this episode, a day before, there were like pictures that came out, and I noticed that Spock is the only person who's not a puppet. Even his ex is a puppet. So I'm like, okay, please, for the love of God, tell me this is not a wacky Vulcan hallucination episode. And so as I'm watching this episode and everything, first, the people who wrote this, IMBD lists Gene Roddenberry, okay, Henry Alonzo Meyer, and Dana Horgan. Now, Gene Roddenberry is dead, and he's been dead since 91, so there ain't no way in the world he wrote this episode. As for the other two, Henry has written for many Star Trek episodes, both comedic and serious. He did the singing episode. Now, Dana, I believe she did the episode prior to this, the noir episode. And so, let me also point out that Rachel Harris was in this episode. She's the Orion, captain. And I remember, she's a comedic actress, and I remember her from Reno 911. I remember her from the Goosebumps reboot on Disney Plus, and I first saw her in Sister because she was like the only white cast member because it's a predominantly black series and stuff. So, is this a legit episode, or is this a hallucination episode? It's a hallucination episode, the third hallucination episode this season out of 5 episodes so far. And it's the third time Spock has hallucinated this season. So it's one of those, it was all a dream type thing, which is the worst way to end an episode, no matter what. Here's the thing, watching this episode, I didn't mind some of it, because there were some parts that made me have a chuckle and everything. And then I'm all like, well, you know what? In TNG, they came out with that Little Rascals episode, and that was actually a pretty good episode. You know what I'm saying? And then there was that TNG episode when Q transported everybody into a make-believe Robin Hood type episode, and that was pretty cool and everything. And so I'm like, you know what? If I can enjoy those two episodes, why not this one? You know what I'm saying? It didn't bother me too much, as long as it kept it for the most part serious and kept it in a science fiction type way. Then it started getting a bit goofier as the episode kept going on, and the whole battle sequence was just a bit goof fest and everything. Now, watching this episode, I kept asking myself, is Spock hallucinating? Because there are certain clues that suggest he is hallucinating and everything. Because you have to really pay attention. Like to Preem, how exactly did she get on the ship and everything? Like Spock had talked about, like, picking her up because he's going to Vulcan and he was on the shuttle, but she was nowhere on the shuttle. Then the big accident happened and I knocked the camera over. And then all of a sudden, like when he's back on the ship, so is she. And it's like, well, how did she get there? Because we never saw her transported. Then there's the way Pike spoke. Pike sounded so unusual every time he spoke. Kept talking about, like, I'm a puppet, not puppet. I'm the captain. I run this ship. Blah 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 blah. But then when he kept talking to like that Orion captain, he just completely sounded different. Like he was terrified. He kept trying to lie to her, and then like him floating in space, and I'm just kind of like, I don't buy Pike speaking like this. Then there's all the injuries that happen. I'm like, okay, La'an, maybe that will make sense because she has that Khan DNA in her. But then Palia got sliced in half and she's still alive, and the whole theory is, oh, since we're puppets, we can't die. But then that red shirt got shot in the chest, and there's a huge gaping hole in his chest. And I'm just kind of like, okay, when he turns back human, how the heck are they gonna fix this? They can't sew no more skin back to him because it got vaporized. Then there's the entire bridge crew, or senior staff, I should say, floating in space because they always wanted to do it. I'm like, why isn't the rest of the ship doing it? And then I'm just kind of like, this has to be a hallucination, and then bam, it was. And then there was all the whole biometrics, like comm panels and stuff. I'm like, since when does the computer panels and everything only tailor to that specific officer who's on duty at that time? And if anybody else touches it, it won't read their fingerprints. I'm all like, have these writers never seen a Star Trek show before? Like, aliens take over the ship all the time. Anybody can touch a computer panel. And even the writers of this show have written for other episodes, so they should know that. So I'm all like, maybe this is a hallucination episode, because even Spock can touch the panels and everything when the puppets cannot, because it doesn't read their fingerprints. And it won't read the fingerprints of, like, the aliens and stuff. And plus, this technology does not exist nowhere in Star Trek. You can lock the system out, but that's not what happened. And it still should be able to read their voice command and stuff. So I'm all like, this has to be a hallucination episode. Now, when it comes to puppets, hey, I'm not opposed to puppets, all right? The Boys and Gen V did puppets, and they actually did it in a very, like, mental illness kind of way that was actually beneficial for the show and hilarious at the same time. They needed to kill a bunch of people. They needed a bunch of blood to shatter everywhere or squirt everywhere. So what they did is that the people who are hallucinating the puppets are seeing puppets and seeing fake blood go everywhere. This helped with the sensors and everything, and they don't have to like CGI a bunch of blood or get a bunch of buckets of paint and everything. Gen V did it the best because a character suffered from mental illness. Every time he rages out, then he sees puppets. Who didn't grow up with the Muppets and everything? The Muppets are one of the most famous puppets of all time by Jim Henson. And his studio actually did the puppets for here in this episode. And he did them for the first two Ninja Turtle movies and stuff, for like the Heads and Master Splinter, Toko and Razor. I grew up on the Muppets and Sesame Street and Muppets Babies and everything. Also, the Puzzle Place, which I talked about on this channel before. And even as an adult, I watched the Lazy Town that had puppets and humans, and only because that dude's flipping around, that was awesome. And the singing's really great. So yeah, as an adult in my early 20s, I'm like, screw it, I'm gonna watch this for the flipping and the singing. And their puppets were way different. It was some type of silicate, like type rubber and everything that they used for like hot toys. So I'm not opposed to puppets, and I'm not opposed to like a silly like Star Trek episode when it's filler, but it's better when there's like 20 episodes, not 10. Every episode has pretty much just been filler this season, and that's the problem. Like, it's just one gimmick episode after another and I can't talk. It's just one gimmick episode after another. There I go. But why puppets of all things? Well, I think it's because of that Gen V and the Boys episode. They got away with puppets, so they're all like, hey, maybe we can too. However, I think this episode would have worked because at first it was legit. You know what I'm saying? And with it being legit and rooted into science and everything, or even if they were to do magic, it would have worked. Now, the part that started to lose me is when people started to get hurt and they can just sew the bodies up and everything will be fine. And it's like, no, that don't make no sense. And they have to think of the laws of the physics of being a puppet. There is no laws of physics when it comes to being a puppet. You know what I'm saying? So that didn't make no sense. And then that huge goofy battle at the end just really made no sense if all they was gonna do was turn off life support to make the aliens go to sleep. So that's when it started to lose me in this episode. So I'm kind of mixed with this episode. I didn't hate it. I actually just laughed a couple of times because it was funny. Come on now. But this is not Star Trek. That's the problem. Star Trek is supposed to be serious. It's not supposed to be silly, wacky, and goofy with a bunch of puppets running around. But I will say the puppet acting was some of the best acting I've seen on this show. The dialogue just came out better with them and everything. I just don't get it. Like, they really was able to express themselves and stuff and not be so overly stiff. And because the problem I'm having with Star Trek is when they do start talking silly and wacky and using slang, it doesn't seem right for live action. Here I can disband my belief because of the simple fact they're puppets and everything. But hey, let's get into what this episode's actually about. La'an just straight up break up with Spock. This is real. She said they're drifting further and further apart and they should just break up. Him being upset over this. Now here's the problem. We haven't seen them drift far and far apart this season. Only one episode when they had one argument and everything. This is why you need 20 episodes to show this further drifting apart. But whatever. She breaks up with him. He's upset. He calls his ex up and, want to reassure like his logic or something like that. There's a Vulcan like ritual that they have to go through that he has missed. She tells him the reason why they broke up because he has embraced his human side way too much. And the fact of the matter is he forgot about this important Vulcan ritual that was just a few days ago. She agrees to come on the ship only if there are no shenanigans and everything. She doesn't like all this human emotional crap and everything. So Spock is talking to Scotty. This part is real. Scotty wants to test the transporter. that make them transport from a very, very, very long distance. And he's gonna use this old puppet of his to like test it out. And he talks about how like there's this cadet that he knew and he hated because Palea favored him and everything, and so like he is going to like test it out. And this is when he transports like the puppet into the transporter buffer, and supposedly this is supposed to cause it to like pushing its limits that causes it to like crash out and turn the crew into puppets. I'm curious, why is this version of Scotty so gloom and down all the time? Like he's always depressed and just grumpy and gloomy and everything. The original one was more upbeat and more prideful and stuff. Also, like, why is the transporter system, like the back panel, why are there screens and buttons on it? I don't know. Anyway, so before they can go to Vulcan and everything, they have to go to this other planet that's being like pirated by Orions and stuff. I guess like to test the transporter out, Spock is in the shuttle and he's deploying mines and everything. Then, like I told you before, Scotty does the thing with the transporter, and then all of a sudden, everybody starts to beam up, and the ship disappears and then reappears. And so when Spock goes back to like the bridge or the ship and everything, everything's all like spooky, like nobody's there, and I'm like, okay, I'm feeling this, you know what I'm saying? And then he finds like the crew and they're all turned into puppets. He couldn't see them because they were so short before. But then all of a sudden, Dupree comes on like the bridge. And I'm just like, wait, how and when did she get there? The transporters are messing up. I didn't see Spock pick her up in the shuttle. I didn't see a shuttle with her on there coming to like the ship. So I'm like, this has to be a hallucination or something. And so she, of course, is upset. The crew is upset. They can't touch none of the comm panels and everything because the ship will not read their fingerprints and everything, and will barely pick up their voices. Pike's new chair is biometrics. It only reads his fingertips and everything and his handprint, and so it won't do that now that they're puppets and stuff. And so Spock is starting to stress out as he's having to do everything on his own. I've noticed the way he's running around like the bridge is in a very James Gunn goofy manner, like how he'll have one of his characters do it. So that started making me think, could this be a hallucination and everything? Why is he running so goofy like? Then all of a sudden, a group of pirates, Orion pirates, are like trying to commandeer the ship. And so this is when we get a lot of silly dialogue from Pike talking to that of the Orion captain. But they're only doing audio and stuff. And he's not being very convincing as he's bluffing. You can tell he's scared. And so like Uhura accidentally hits the button that like, makes the video screen come on. So now the Orions can see that they are puppets. So they start to like, attack the ship and everything like that. Cause she said sometimes it will read my fingerprints and everything. So I'm like, this has to be a hallucination because, they're inconsistent with the writing. So anyway, they board the ship and then all of a sudden Spock has to be the one to like stop them. T'Pring is gathering a bunch of phasers and everything. She says that their fingers will not work on it for some bizarre reason, but Spock will. He engaged in phaser fire, but then he's subdued and everything. And I'm just like, really, Spock? But, he's stressed out. I was expecting for him to go all old school Vulcan on them. But he gets tied up. And so, like, the crew decides, hey, you know what? Because see, here's the thing: they realize they can't get hurt. When La'an was testing out the transporter with Scotty and everything, she came back still as a puppet, and her arm fell off. It got sewn back on, and they realized that, oh, because you're a puppet, you can't bleed or nothing like that. I assumed it was just her Khan DNA, but then we see Palia, who looks goofy in this episode, literally gets sliced in half by a sword. She's completely fine and gets sewn back up. Then a ensign, who's a red shirt, gets shot through the chest and he has a huge hole, but he is still alive. Then they suck Pike out into outer space, but he's alive because he doesn't matter if he can breathe air or not. And so, like, when they shot him, when they sucked him off into outer space, it was kind of like a Wrath of Khan moment, you know. And I was expecting Spock to go all like, you know, into darkness, you know, like scream somebody's name out and literally just murder the Orions. I was expecting him to go ham, but he didn't. He just acted all freaked out and everything. And so I was really disappointed in that. I wanted him to go nuts and just start ripping heads off and everything. And so Pike, whenever he is back, why can't I speak today? I'm like saying words that don't make sense. Anyway, whenever he gets back on the ship and everything, first I was like, how did they get him back on the ship? In order to open a window, everything will get sucked out, but whatever. He tells them, hey, look, we're puppets. There ain't much we can do, so we're going to have to think like puppets and fight like puppets. So this is when you see all the comedic fighting and stuff like that. And then we see Spock get, like, you know, slapped in the face twice by T'Pring, talking about, like, hey, you know what? You're freaking out too much. You need to calm down. You need to focus. You need your logic back, blah, 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 blah. And this is like, what, the third, fourth, fifth time he's been slapped this season. So him along with the puppets are gonna, like, you know, fight, like, you know, the Orions and stuff. And so his plan is to just shut off life support and to distract the Orions long enough so they can't reactivate life support and pass out. Problem is, even the comm panels won't respond to them because their fingerprints aren't on file. Once again, I'm just like, when the heck is this canon? It must be a hallucination episode. So then, after they're subdued and everything, he talks to T'Pring and he realizes he still loves her. He kisses her and wakes up, realizing that she's been interacting with him doing this whole, well, first there was a shuttle accident and that would made him unconscious. Then she did the whole Vulcan ritual with him to try to reassure his logic and this and that. And as they're talking, he says that, you know, he wants to be more logical going forward. This whole chaos, as she likes to call it and everything, just isn't for him. So I'm hoping no more wacky Vulcan episodes. I will say T'Pring in this episode, every time she's on this show, she acts very emotional. So I find it weird that she says that he embraces his human side when she acts like an emotional old school Vulcan at times. But then again, she was a hallucination this episode. But in season 2, the actress started showing emotion whenever she would get flustered and everything. So I'm mixed with this episode. Like I said before, there were times I had fun with it, but then there was other times I'm just kind of like, don't make this a hallucination episode, and they did. And I'm just one of those people that's just kind of like, this was not needed whatsoever. I'm sorry it wasn't. Because of the simple fact, like, there's only 10 episodes this season. We are now in the 5th episode, and we've had like 4 like gimmick type episodes, a bunch of filler type episodes, and it's just kind of like, it's clear with the writing on the wall. They know last season is their last season. They simply just don't care no more. They simply just don't care no more. So this is probably going to be the straw that broke the camel's back for a lot of people. As for me, I would continue to watch, but I don't want to renew my Paramount Plus, so I'm about to end it now. Alrighty, well, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.